Welcome, guys, to Kieran's Corner. Once again, it's your team, your say. After a small hiatus because a COVID vaccine decided to kick my ass into next week. But we've got everyone's favorite college football podcast host, Lee Wakefield. Welcome to my show.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for a very nice introduction. Don't know if it will remain as cordial, but yeah, I hope it does. But yeah, thanks for having me, mate. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, this is going to be interesting because the quarterback who is going to be talked about a lot today is a guy who we were kind of split on, but I think now probably our opinions are a little bit more aligned. But without further ado, guys, welcome to Kieran's Corner.
Kick it and go, kick it and go. We'll slip on, spin, move, in zone, go. Off the sideline, a touchdown, I put on the show. Kick it and go. I had to kick off and go. Kick it and go. I had to kick off and go. We'll slip on, spin, move, in zone, go. Off the sideline, a touchdown, I put on the show. Kick it and go. I had to kick off and go.
It's about that time again, and today, as you can see on screen, we're talking about the Los Angeles Chargers. So let's start at the logical point off last year's off season and pre-draft build-up and all the talk and stuff, and we were split on one pick that was going to happen. But talk about how you felt going into last off season before the draft and everything like that. How are you feeling about the position that the Chargers are in?
So taking it back about 12 months' time. So yeah, it was time for a new era, wasn't it? Obviously, Philip Rivers was gone. He'd gone to Indianapolis, and we were having a vacancy at quarterback. Obviously, we had Tyrod Taylor, and it was all set up to pick one of the quarterbacks that was there, and it was looking like Justin Herbert. Joe Burrow, as we know, was kind of nailed on. After the season he had in LSU, and we don't need any invitations to talk about that, I guess, with you here. And then it was pretty nailed on that Tua was going to Miami, since they courted him for such a long time, which kind of left Justin Herbert being the last one remaining, really. And obviously, he fell to the Chargers at number 6, kind of fell into the lap. There was some talk about trading up, in the late stages and things like that. I never really kind of bought into that. We didn't kind of need to do that. There's no kind of necessity to do so. So yeah, we ended up with Justin Herbert. I am going to be completely frank and completely honest with you. Obviously, going into the college football season that preceded this draft, was really, really high on Justin Herbert. I had him above Tua in my rankings. Obviously, at that stage, Joe Burrow was not really on the radar for being the number 1 pick or anything like that. And I was, as I look back to that, I should be really, really happy that obviously they got Herbert. But by that time, I'd kind of worked myself up into this frenzy. I'm a defensive guy, right? So I was kind of thinking that if they can get Isaiah Simmons and if they can pair him with Derwin James and just have kind of 2 players of that mold, this defense will just have so much flexibility. It'll just be able to kind of take away any weapon available in the NFL. However, obviously we ended up with Justin Herbert. I didn't think it was kind of realistic that they're going to end up with Simmons, but ended up with Herbert. Wasn't the guy I wanted, because I had backed myself into this corner where I just really wanted this defense to just be insane, and it would have been. But obviously, we can look forward to maybe that when we talk about Brandon Staley a bit later on. But no, I was happy with Herbert. I didn't think he'd start. I didn't think he'd come into the fold as early as he did. Obviously, everyone knows what happened now, but he just kind of proved everyone wrong, didn't he? And including in a lot of people, including myself almost, because I didn't think he'd start. I was saying, this time 12 months ago, or maybe a little bit longer after the draft, I was like, oh, well, Herbert's got the ceiling, but I'm happy for Tyrod to kind of play probably for the full season, and then you can blood Justin Herbert right now, and that's when we can see what we've got after he's kind of worked out the mental aspects of the game, which he kind of did on the fly and had a great rookie season.
Yeah, because the only real positive things I had to say about him, that he was, the talent was ridiculous. The dude has a fucking howitzer for an arm. Like when you saw him at the combine and stuff, throwing for 60+ yards flat-footed, which is just, that's not normal. That's not like a normal level of arm talent. That's like Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But like I said to you, I thought he was too raw, and I thought he was almost Mitch Trubisky in the regard that he wasn't accurate and he struggled with certain defensive concepts and stuff. But happy to say he proved me wrong. And be honest, even if Joe hadn't have got hurt, I still think he would have given Joe a good run for money for Rookie of the Year, just because of the ridiculous sort of things he was doing. I think they were both they're both fairly level in terms of their game up until Joe got hurt. Just Justin was making some more impressive plays. We'll say that with his feet and stuff, because he's ridiculously athletic. I didn't think he didn't show that much at Oregon. Like he
wasn't allowed. He just wasn't allowed at all. Like Marcus Arroyo, obviously in his final season at Oregon, just didn't take the training wheels off. And he went through 4 staffs, 3 offensive coordinators. So yeah, it was difficult for him to kind of come back. I think I got those numbers just thrown around, actually. 3 staffs, 4 offensive coordinators. But he just wasn't allowed to showcase what he was allowed to in Los Angeles. And we know that, we'll get on to Anthony Lynn, things like that. It wasn't exactly, a Kyle Shanahan, Sean McVay kind of really pushing the boundaries of offensive football kind of offense. And he still kind of flourished. So, hopefully we'll see more of that this year.
Yeah, I was going to say that's kind of good, because Anthony Lynn was never considered like one of these exciting offensive guys, and Justin Herbert still did amazing in the scheme. Well, look at how many games did he start? Almost all of them, I think.
It was 15, wasn't it? 15, just the first week that he didn't start.
And the game that impressed me most was actually his first start was against Kansas City, because he looked better than Patrick Mahomes that game. That was absolutely disgusting. But we look at the stats here: 4,300 yards, like a completion percentage which I never thought he would hit any time in his career, just given what we'd seen at Oregon. 31 touchdowns, shattering Baker Mayfield's rookie record, and only 10 picks. That is what most veteran quarterbacks would consider a good year. And then obviously, offensive rookie of the year, which we had this debate, and me and Liam went over it, and the only reason I said I gave it to Justin Jefferson is because he beat Randy Moss's records. Justin Herbert beat Baker Mayfield's, but it still is.
That's you thing, I'm sure, came into it a little bit as well.
Sean was not happy about that when I said that. But yeah, it was nonetheless, I think, well-deserved award, and super. He was exciting to watch. But tell me how you felt when you found out moments before the Kansas City game that he was going to be starting. Were you apprehensive, maybe not thinking he was ready, or were you excited to just see this guy already?
Well, I mean, the Chargers fans had pretty much the same reaction that Justin did by the sounds of things. It was kind of like, oh, okay, so Justin's under center, or he's in shock, I think, for the first play. So it's like, okay, what are we doing? So your first reaction as someone who, he's kind of wanting to see what kind of plays are in, what kind of formations are in, and things like that. Maybe trying to think about what play, in that split second, the few seconds before the actual snap goes. I'm looking around for Tyrod. I'm thinking, is Tyrod split out wide? Is Tyrod somewhere else? I couldn't locate him. So I was a bit like, okay, maybe they're just going to try and run sort of trick play or something, we're trying to catch him off guard sort of thing. But obviously then it comes out that, Justin carries on, plays the first series and scores a touchdown, or, we scored a touchdown in the first series. So you're thinking, okay, this is great. And then obviously the news comes out and things like that. So you're just like, okay, well, let's just see what happens. I'm an optimist. I'm a positive sort of thinker when it comes to bringing new players, bringing young players in particular. Probably one of the things why, was maybe so close to the draft in college football is I always think about the best things. I'm thinking about what these guys can do rather than what they can't do. So I'm thinking, let's just see how it goes. We're in a situation here where we don't expect to beat Kansas City at home in the second game of the season. Especially when we're in a situation where we beat the Bengals in the first week, but only because Randy Bullock missed a chip shot field goal.
Fat Randy.
So, you're in a situation where, you've had a bit of a shaky start to the season. You've got Kansas City, which is almost like a little free hit at the beginning of the season. And then, you're kind of are waiting for the next few weeks afterwards, and also throughout that game, for the play to drop off and something to happen, or something to kind of go wrong, or a pick, or just like a bit of a rookie play, where he just does something a bit silly and it kind of goes from there. But, you've got Herbert playing well, Herbert, like you say, matching Patrick Mahomes stride for stride almost. And also, I can't remember what Kansas City player it was, but running some guy over and then knocking him out. Do you know what I mean? On the play, and you think, my God, this guy's come to play. He's here. He's enjoying himself by the looks of things. And, we're hanging with Kansas City in the second game of the season. So you are thinking positive at that stage. And then, you like I said before, you're going through the next few weeks thinking, well, we're kind of waiting for this to kind of fall down and fall off, but it's not. And it's brilliant. You know what I mean? And by the end of the season, or by the middle part throws of the season, because obviously, we've won the last 4 games, he was kind of the only reason that he switched on Sunday.
I mean, he was kind of a bright spot on. Sorry to say, Lee, but a bit of a fucking dismal team, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
The uniforms were great, but
the look's
it
always
just seemed
good,
like
the aesthetic. It's always there.
It just felt like you were underperforming given the talent that you had on the field. Justin Herbert was playing so well consistently. It didn't correlate to me how you weren't getting more wins. I was like, this doesn't track. You don't have a quarterback doing this well and the team not eking out wins. But we're going to have to talk about it. It's probably special teams, really, if I'm going to be honest.
Special teams and coaching decisions, man. That was where the sort of basis of this season kind of falling down was, if I'm going to be perfectly honest with you.
Look, I don't want to bring it up, but it's 3 guys on screen in a certain uniform here. And obviously Bill Belichick versus rookie quarterbacks. But Herbert didn't play terribly. I mean, it was arguably his worst game of the season. But
yeah, it's the
really
team's worst game.
Special teams let you down in a big way. And I think Brandon Staley is smart enough to maybe invest in that some more. But before we get to him, let's talk about former coach Anthony Lynn. Barely a winning record, but still a winning record. But if you look at the one-score games, it's a lot of one-score games that you guys played.
Yeah, that's it.
Do you feel like to me it never seemed like he was aggressive enough on offense to really? I don't know. I just felt like he was trying to emulate these great defensive coaches that we see, and thought the offense would just sort of run itself without giving it enough forethought. Like, obviously he got Justin Herbert, and you had some weapons like Hunter Henry, and you've got great receivers like Keenan Allen and stuff. But the play calling on offense just felt almost lackadaisical. Like you guys had no urgency there. Like the Kansas City game was a prime example. You could have won that game.
Yeah.
100% you could have won that game. And it just seemed like there was no urgency. Were you kind of happy to see him gone? Despite the fact that he'd been with you guys for the past 3 years, were you kind of happy to see him gone after this season?
Yeah, by the end of it, it had really gone stale. So let me take you through kind of the whole tenure of Anthony Lynn as we've got it here from 2017 onwards. So first year comes in, loses 4 games to start out the season, and you're thinking, wow, this, what's going on? This new head coach not getting off to the greatest start. And, like you said, mentioned the one-score games were the kind of, that was what the reign was all around, really. And it was all about those one-score games and often coming out on the wrong end of them. So you start off really bad, manages to pull the Chargers to a 9-7 record. So you're getting a winning season in your first season. So you're thinking, okay, maybe, after a bad start, you've got some shoots of recovery, and then, you've seen some growth there as well. So looking quite promising. Anthony Lynn's also a great guy as well, great leader. So you're kind of buying into him with that. You can't say too much about him as a person. He seems like a great leader of men and things like that. Next season, obviously, we'll go into the playoffs, come up short against your Patriots again after a great performance against the Ravens. So, middle season, you're thinking, okay, we've won, I think, 12 games. I think it was 12-4 to finish out the season. So you're thinking, there's something here. We finished the previous season strong. We've come in to this next season. We've got 12 wins on the board, and we've won a playoff game, which we haven't done for many, many years. Before that, it was since Mike McCoy's year when we beat the Bengals. Coming into the next year, last year, again, kind of just coming out the wrong side of short-handed wins and one-score games as well. And you're just thinking those problems from the first year are just rearing their heads again. So it's just getting really disappointing. Plus, you obviously fire Ken Wisenhunt, and replace him with Shane Steichen, And then you've got the offensive play calling, like you say, it's not there. Anthony Lynn's having a little bit of a hand in it. You think that Steichen, sometimes his play calling is great, sometimes it's not. Anthony Lynn then comes in, it gets a little bit muddled, like the mortars get muddied a little bit. And like you say, he's trying to have his fingers in too many pies, because by that time, the special teams is absolutely falling apart. And then he's trying to call special teams plays, as we've noticed, against the Patriots and against other teams. That's not going too well either. So I think he just bit off too much that he could chew, to be honest with you. And he tried to do too much, and he kind of, again, it wasn't concise and clear enough, and the lines of communication just weren't good enough. And it just seemed that the Chargers were winning games at the end of the year in spite of him, not because of him, and because of Herbert's play, and the defense kind of stepped up a little bit more. So yeah, by the end of it, it was kind of time for a change. I think he'd kind of got a bit more sort of grouchy in his interviews and stuff like that, and you kind of see that he was kind of ready to move on, I think, as well, although he wouldn't say that publicly. But yeah, it was definitely time to move on, I think, and it did have its highs, don't get me wrong. The rain had definitely had its highs. That Baltimore game, I often watch it, just for something to do sometimes, because that was a great defensive performance against Lamar Jackson when he was at that kind of peak of his powers. But yeah, by the end of last year, he was ready to go, for sure.
Yeah, I was going to say, because your roster is insane. Let's be real. You got a really good roster.
Yeah.
And I think that's what Brandon Staley is going to take advantage of. And obviously, there's a notable name on here in Vic Fangio, Matt Nagy, John Fox. But the one I want to focus on is Sean McVay. Because obviously we've talked about how, his recent roles are defensive. But I've said it seems like any guy who's even come within 5 feet of Sean McVay or had lunch with him or once spotted him at Walmart seems to get a job in the NFL now. But do you think that offensive philosophy he could have potentially learned from them is actually going to unlock a potential to your offense that you've honestly been missing since probably Anthony Lynn came in? I know Rivers is a great quarterback when you had him, but he wasn't exactly athletic. The most prolific athletic thing is he's done in his life is have 9 kids. So he's never been a guy who's just going to tuck it and run, but Justin Herbert can do that. We saw with some of the hits he laid on other people, the dude's got, a massive penis and he's ready to run people over. But do you think Brandon Staley, working with guys like Sean McVay is going to just unlock a new realm of possibilities for the weapons you've got on this offense?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, some people might know this, but some people might not. So I'll just kind of go ahead and say it. Brandon Staley was actually a college quarterback, and he didn't really start to think about defense until he started to get into the NFL. As we've got on the screen here, we've got all these previous roles in Chicago, Denver, and in LA with our landlords, the Rams. They're all defensive roles. And he kind of looks at defense through an offensive scope. So he kind of looks at defense to say, like, how can I kind of beat the offense in this sense? Because he's got a great understanding of both sides of the ball. The other advantage that Brandon Staley's got is kind of what I was saying about Anthony Lynn, where he tried to take on too much. Brandon Staley's going to take everyone's opinions and he's going to kind of take them on board and see if they can make the football team better through that. He's also going to take on board the previous coaches, as you've got some great coaches on the slide here as well. Vic Fangio, obviously, a defensive genius. Sean McVay, offensive genius. So you've got both sides of the ball covered here in Brandon Staley's previous roles and the guys that he's worked with and taken influence from. So yeah, 100%. I feel like he's a really well-rounded coach who's going to, like I say, take everyone's ideas on board and make the football team better. Like you say, you can't not absorb information from these guys because they are right at the peak of the game. And also, to add to that, he's also said that he's learned a lot from the players that he has coached as well, such as like Aaron Donald, Von Miller, Jalen Ramsey. These defensive players, he says that he's actually learned more from them than he's actually taught them as a coach, which I think shows how humble he is and shows like how much of a guy he is, that he's willing to kind of learn and kind of be that guy who can absorb information as well as give it out, which can only bode well for the Chargers with their kind of young roster. And like you say, with the players that they've got, because they've got some incredible players as well. So hopefully it's about harnessing that and Brandon Staley being kind of an upgrade at the coaching level and going from there and hoping for a better season.
Yeah, and obviously he was with the Rams last year, who had he was the defensive coordinator for, honestly, one of the best defenses in the NFL, if not the best. I know he had an abundance of weapons with guys like Jalen Ramsey and Aaron Donald, but you still need a guy to make them go. Without direction, they're going to be terrible. Yeah. We've seen a lot of teams that are stacked from top to bottom with talent, like the Cardinals, but without the proper coaching, they're going to consistently underachieve. Look, people probably get annoyed with the amount I hate on Cliff Kingsbury, but the guy is a bag of shit. When you've got a roster with guys like DeAndre Hopkins, an incredible talent in Kyler Murray, Larry Fitzgerald, you've got guys like Isaiah Simmons on the defense, not anymore, but Patrick Peterson. Mm-hmm. And guys like that, and you consistently underperform, it just shows how needed coaching is. But yeah, Brandon Staley is an Ohio man, so clearly very intelligent and handsome. This state is known for it, apparently. I'm not even born here, so I don't know why I'm saying that. But yeah, it's exciting to look forward as a Chargers fan. It's kind of like a new era. But But before we fully get on to next season and your hopes for next season, I think this has gone the wrong way here. It's not in and out, because I don't remember Hunter Henry joining your team this year. He has actually gone to the 6-time Super Bowl champion New England Patriots. How have you felt about the free agency so far? I mean, there's only 6 notable transactions here, but how do you feel about these?
So, we've spoken about it in the past personally, and also we've mentioned it on our podcast a few times, or you have at least. Yeah, I was upset that Hunter Henry was allowed to get out of the building. He's a player that made the offense better. He was an offensive weapon for us, and we haven't really replaced that in Jared Cook, because Jared Cook's a decent tight end. He's coming to the end of his career. Hunter Henry's in the prime of his career, and he's also a better blocker and a better all-round weapon and player than Jared Cook is. So, yeah, that one stung a little bit. It was kind of always on the cards, because we know that Bill Belichick's always been a big fan of Hunter Henry as well. There's that clip that goes around with Bill kind of going up to him at the end of the game and whispering something in his ear. So you wonder if he's been kind of caught in him in some way or shape or form for quite a while. Otherwise than that,
that's tampering.
Well, Bill's been known to do some worse things, so I'm sure he can get away with that in some way. So, the other guys that you've got in here, Denzel Perryman and Rayshon Jenkins, I wasn't too displeased to see those 2 guys go. Not been a big fan of those 2 guys. I know that I'll be kind of out on a limb and maybe that's a little bit unpopular to say that amongst Chargers fans, but I think we can do better than those 2 guys. And I think there's better players on the roster in the linebacking room for sure than Denzel Perryman. And I think Rayshon Jenkins is an easily replaceable player. So in terms of the out, we've not got it around. We like to say we've got the wrong way around here. So in terms of the outs, we're fine. Hunter Henry's are below, but again, it's a tight end. You can get them. It's not a huge problem. Jared Cook will be a bit of a layover, and then we can get someone maybe next year in the draft or something like that, and we can source a more long-term solution. In terms of the ins, obviously Corey Linsley is the headline act. He's absolutely going to be critical to this offensive line and kind of breeding that new culture that we're going to have on the offensive line with this new group that we're constructing. Because only Brian Bulaga is going to be the only starter that started last year. Although I guess starter in Brian Bulaga's case, considering he's injured so often, is a bit of a loose term. We brought in Odia Boucher, who we've not got on there, and also we've got in Matt Filer, who we do. So I think we've got our guard spot sorted. We've got Corey Linsley to be the pivot. Brian Bulaga's there. We're just waiting to complete that unit in the draft. Hopefully with the 13th pick. But yeah, generally free agency, the Chargers are never kind of big spenders. They're not like a team that goes out and spends a heck of a lot of money. Tom Telesco's always pretty frugal. He always gets a great deal. And I think he continued to do that. And he continued to be great in free agency, which he generally is, without having to be the headliner and without kind of going in and, in that first wave free agency where everyone overspends, he doesn't do that. Corey Linsley was in the kind of second wave. He gets the best center on the market. I didn't think he would do that. I didn't think he would be like him. I thought he'd go out and get someone like David Andrews, if I'm going to be completely honest. That was my kind of one that I'd targeted, that kind of second tier almost of that sort of position, although he's still a great player. We're kind of setting ourselves up for the draft now, not backing ourselves into any corners, because we've also got Ryan Smith from Tampa Bay, who's going to be a great special teamer, hopefully. Won't be, be filling out the end of the depth chart on the cornerback position. But yeah, pretty happy with the draft. With free agency, and leads into the draft quite nicely.
How excited are you to have probably one of my favorite players come back in Derwin James, because he missed last season with a knee injury? Are you excited to have him back? Because I felt like you missed him a lot. Your secondary was getting exposed constantly, and he was kind of the anchor of that. Are you excited to just see him back on the field and see how he can perform? Absolutely.
It's no big coincidence that the last time the Chargers made the playoff, Derwin James played most of the season, and the 2 seasons since that, he's not been on the field. We've not made the playoff. So yeah, absolutely. We saw it on, was it Hard Knocks that we were on last year? We saw it on a Hard Knocks where he was kind of covering. We obviously saw the injury as well, which was not great. But he seems to be kind of fit and firing. He seems ready. Obviously, he's had a long time to come back. He's had a year or so to come back to that from that injury. And he's a leader on our defense. He's a leader on our team, and you can see it if anyone has kind of seen Brandon Staley talk in the past couple of months since he's been Chargers head coach. When he talks about Derwin James, his eyes absolutely light up. So you've got to say that Derwin James is going to be a player that he's going to be kind of a main feature in this defense, and a player that, Brandon Staley talks about defensive backs, and he kind of talks about edge guys, and he talks about how he can make Derwin James and Joey Bosa, here's Aaron Donald and Jalen Ramsey. We know that they play slightly different positions. Obviously, Donald's on the inside, Jalen Ramsey's a corner, but he's got a defensive back and a defensive lineman that he can really kind of base his defense around. So really, really excited to see Derwin back. Really excited to see what the defense can do, because I do think that unit is going to be the leader of this team, and that's saying a lot because obviously we know there's a lot of offensive talent on this roster as well.
Are you excited for the draft? Because, well, I know you are excited.
You're asking me.
But are you excited now that there's reports that Justin Herbert is reportedly asking for you guys to go after Penei Sewell? Yeah,
this has come out, hasn't it, over the past 28, 48 hours. I mean, whether that is going to be able to be even the case, I don't know, because the Bengals might take him. But I mean, we kind of got together, didn't we, a few weeks ago, a couple of weekends ago, when we did the Draft Punks mega mock draft, and I was drafting for the Chargers, and I made the exact trade that's been talked about. We're going up, trading with the Lions, and going up to number 7 and getting Penei Sewell. If he's there, I think Tom Telesco should definitely consider it. It's what I said when we did the Draft Punks podcast, and whether it's needed, I don't know, because you've got great tackles in this class. And I also think there's an outside chance they could take a cornerback at number 13 as well. But, I could not speak highly enough of Penei Sewell. He's my second player in this draft after Trevor Lawrence. I've graded him incredibly highly. So I just feel like, it would be an absolute dream scenario. The problem is obviously what you're giving up to get up there. It's not ideal to be able to giving up draft picks, although for once, it seems like the first time ever the Chargers have actually got quite a lot of draft picks. We've got 9 draft picks because we traded Des for King, and also we've got that comp pick from Phillip Rivers going to Indianapolis. So we do have a little bit more ammo to play with than usual. Whether it's advisable to kind of go up and get a player when you can probably get a decent enough player at 13, can you fill out the rest of your roster? Are you in a position where it's kind of go time right now, which I guess it is with Justin Herbert being on his rookie deal. It's kind of time to look at win the Super Bowl with that rookie deal for your quarterback. So there's foot in both camps, really. I wouldn't be disappointed to see Penei Sewell come in, of course not. But what I would be disappointed if they kind of mortgage the whole draft just to get him when there's depth issues and there's other problems to solve for this team. So I wouldn't like them to kind of mortgage the whole draft just for one guy. I'd be quite happy to take another offensive tackle. Also, I've been big on Christian Darrisaw. If they took him at 13 and then they were able to fill out the rest of their problems and the rest of their spots on the roster, then I'd probably be more happy with that. And I say that with a little bit of trepidation in my voice, obviously, because it's Penei Sewell. But yeah, I'd be happy to kind of see that the Chargers are in a better position and after the draft than they were before it, whether that comes with Penei Sewell at 7 or 6 or wherever it is, or wherever, or whether that comes by filling it out, just taking the picks that we've got and taking good players.
Yeah, we know my thoughts on Penei Sewell, ever the contrarian that I am. But I know you were so enamored with him. So I just was wondering if you'd have seen those reports and if you were on board with it. Because like I said, you sort of had the same thinking when we did that mega mock. Went up, go get him. It would be great for Justin Herbert. There's already that familiarity there. So he sort of knows, Sewell would be able to adjust to his blocking adjustments and stuff like that probably a little bit quicker. I do think maybe he's a bit raw. I think he won't be great for the first half of the season, but I think once he gets that refinement, he's going to be a top level lineman, no doubt.
What I will say is the kind of thinking that I had when we did that podcast a few weeks ago was it wasn't premeditated. So it was like, okay, so this situation is occurring. There's a chance, obviously, once he gets past Atlanta, we know the Bengals aren't going to take a quarterback. We know that the Miami Dolphins aren't going to take a quarterback. So there's going to be other teams targeting that 7th position for a quarterback. So you've got to kind of maybe get into a bit of a bidding war with them, with the Lions. So whether the price gets pushed up a little bit too much remains to be seen. Depends on the aggressiveness of other teams and the bidding war that Detroit probably try to manufacture out of that. So yeah, it really depends on the situation. It's not something that I'm glad we haven't done it now. Let's say that. To pre-draft and things like that. I'm much happier to kind of see how it unfolds and go from there on draft night. And if they do it, like I say, as long as the price is right, then yeah, happy days. If not, then I'm happy as well.
Yeah, I just think it would be a good get. And particularly, you're not a team that's like I said, you're not hurting for talent, but a guy that you don't need to produce day one. Just in my opinion, I'm saying that I don't think I think he's insanely talented, and I think he'll be one of the best linemen in this draft if he gets the right development. But I just feel like a guy like Rashawn Slater or whatever is better day one because they are more experienced. We've seen what they've done against NFL sort of guys. Like Rashawn Slater fucking manhandled Chase Young, and he's probably one of the best young edge rushers in the league right now. So, and on that Ohio State defense, they bring so much pressure. But I think Saul will be great at the Chargers because you have time to, let him develop. You're not going to maybe push him, and you have good offensive line coaches.
Let me just say this though about Rashawn Slater, and I'll kind of chuck in Elijah Vera Tucker into this. Brandon Staley talked a lot about length on the offensive line, and I know that I'm not someone who buys into this sort of thing with people having arms of a certain length that are millimeters short of the perceived threshold. But Brandon Staley obviously does, which I think does rule out Elijah Vera Tucker and rules out Rashawn Slater. So I think what we're looking at is either trade up Penei Sewell or we're looking at Christian Darrisaw at 13.
Well, it's funny you say that actually, because the arm length came into play with two guys that I was very wrong about, and that's Nick and Joey Bosa. I didn't think their arm length. I thought anytime they faced a rangy tackle, it would be a real big problem. But Joey especially has that elite first step and that big spring he has to beat guys despite having T-Rex arms. But what are your expectations for next season? Not maybe in terms of record, but how the team's gonna. You don't have to give me a number or whatever, but 17-game season stuff. How are you sort of expecting you guys to stack up against other teams in the AFC? Obviously, your division is it's pretty much you in Kansas City at this point. The Denver is just fucked. They don't matter anymore. But how do you feel like you're going to stack up against your guys in division, the guys in the AFC, and then the guys you're actually playing? Because I'm guessing you've seen your schedule now.
Yeah, the schedule's pretty difficult, so that kind of tempers expectations straight away. You're looking maybe at the end of last season, you're thinking, oh, brilliant, we've got the NFC least, so that looks good. But then you look at it now and you think, well, Washington actually look pretty decent. Dak will be back for the Cowboys. The Philadelphia Eagles, they've got a little bit of draft capital to be able to restock and refuel. Less said about the Giants, better. I think we'll probably take care of them quite easily. It's one of those where it's like, yeah, you're looking at the schedule, it looks pretty difficult. So you've got to, like I say, temper expectations accordingly. Then you've got Kansas City in the division. We know we can hang with them, but they are the class of the division. I think there's no two ways about that. Maybe this time next year we can kind of look at that and maybe we can be looking to challenge them. Like you say, you'd be kind of hoping that, the Raiders just don't know what they're doing. I don't think they ever really have a massive, sort of master plan with John Gruden there. He just kind of does things on a whim by the looks of things. And they should be two games that we should be able to take care of. Denver, they're still up in the air, what they do about quarterback. So, in the division, yeah, we'll probably look shooting for second. The rest of the AFC, I think, if we can sort of make something of ourselves, especially if we can have this dominant defense that Brandon say they should be able to get there, we could be a problem for teams, and that's something that we should be looking for. It's something that we should be looking to do. I think with the 7th playoff spot now as well, I feel like we can kind of shoot for that. So what we're looking at, maybe like a 10-7 record, perhaps something like that. I don't know if we're going to get that, but maybe that's what we should be shooting for, to be able to be kind of cemented into that 6th, 7th spot. And then, like I say, if you've got a dominant defense in the playoffs, then, any given Sunday kind of thing, isn't it? I know it's an old cliche, but it certainly rings true. And so I'd back us to kind of beat anyone on a one-to-one basis. Because, like I say, if you can hang with Kansas City, then, if you build in a defense that can be the antidote to their kind of NASCAR basketball shooting, sort of Golden State Warriors kind of things. Yeah, do you know what I mean? Then you can hang with them, can't you? We know we're not exactly tepid on offense ourselves. So, yeah, if you're building a team to beat Kansas City, then you're almost building a team to beat the whole of the league. So that's kind of what we do. We're in a good position to do that straight away. So, yeah, I mean, I'm not going to sort of bet on us to get 10-7, but that should be kind of the upper limit of kind of maybe what we're looking for. But do you know what I'm looking for? Minimum sort of expectations is just to look a lot better as a team, just to kind of maybe use this first year as maybe like the first year of Anthony Lynn, as I mentioned before, get a positive record, go into next year looking better, going into the draft, and maybe, you have a better idea of what you're going to do before you attack the last 3 years of Justin Herbert's rookie deal. And then you can maybe be shooting for a Super Bowl. But maybe see this really is a stepping stone. I think maybe we've got temper expectations, although the roster is amazing. On paper, but we say that every year with the Chargers, I feel, and it kind of gets a bit boring at this point.
So playoff window 2-3 years, you reckon, to you like
I mean, like I say,
playoffs
I think,
consistently.
Like I say, I think we can make the playoffs this year if everything kind of falls right, and I think we can make the 6th, 7th, maybe even the 5th spot, something like that. I don't know, but it's one of those things where, because that Kansas City is in the division, it's difficult to kind of say, yeah, we'll be shooting for the number 1, number 2 seed, which obviously makes your playoff journey much more difficult, especially now with the extra teams in there and things like that. So, but yeah, like I say, maybe if we can see this as a stepping stone, and then consistently be looking at, right, we're actually a really good team now with a really young core, and we can actually shoot for the playoffs consistently with potentially one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and an explosive offense, and also a defensive mastermind who can kind of win any game on a given week, sort of thing. And then we become a really dangerous playoff team that you hopefully kind of be in there consistently, and then you go from there. But yeah, temper expectations this year. If we can get a positive record, I'd be happy. If we make the 7th playoff spot, then even better.
Well, I'm certainly excited to see you match up against Kansas City, especially given, how your first game with them went last season. It was so close with clearly what was incompetent coaching. So it'd be good to see what Brandon Staley can sort of, but those guys might be on the warpath after getting absolutely mollywopped in the Super Bowl. So you never know. And also they've signed one of the best offensive linemen in the league in former Patriot Joe Thuney. So they're going to have help there now. But, everyone who's seen the show, the thing I talk about a lot is, how did you become a Chargers fan? Because I speak to Sean, and it's sort of like that British misery loves company mentality of everyone loves the underdogs, and you got guys who are Steelers fans just because they're an iconic team. And even when I had Kieran on here to talk about the Green Bay Packers, he just liked the color green because he's Irish. So he went that way. But how did you sort of become a Chargers fan? How did you become introduced to the team?
So I would guess it was just taking it back to when I was a little bit younger, when I was about 16, 17. I was just like bored on a Sunday evening. I had TV on in my room. I was just flicking through the sports channels. There was nothing taking my fancy. And I just came across football, and it was almost like a complete chance almost. And I just kind of got into it from there. Didn't really have a team per se for the first year or so. But then obviously kind of just, you build up like a bit of an affinity for certain players and things like that, or certain players just kind of excite you. And the first player that really caught my eye was LaDainian Tomlinson, obviously playing for the Chargers. Then you also had the Phillip Rivers factor as well. He was kind of this young upstart quarterback who kind of established himself, obviously after starting, after Drew Brees had been kind of traded away. And you just think, well, we've got that kind of young quarterback who can get behind this player, this running back who, running back's kind of this position, isn't it, where it's quite easy to understand. You get the ball, you can run forward, and it's kind of easy. You don't need to know a great deal about football to look at a running back and say he's quite good and I quite like him. And I guess that was what it was when I kind of had this rudimentary understanding of football and still kind of figuring my way out when I was like I say 16, 17 years old. So yeah, just kind of LaDainian Tomlinson obviously just stuck with that, and he's the reason why I became a Chargers fan, really. Also, last thing was obviously blue, white and yellow, being a Leeds United fan. Kind of the same colours, not exactly, but pretty similar colour palette. So kind of just sealed the deal for us, really.
About to say Leeds and Chargers. That really is a misery love company sort of situation there.
Hopefully looking up on both scores at the moment, though.
I was going to say, I don't remember. My favourite moment watching Leeds United was when Mark Viduka banged an absolute screamer to stop Chelsea winning the league in about 2005, I think. A long time ago. I was only young. I mean, I'm nearly 30 now, but yeah, that Leeds have always been a fun team, and that they've had a bit of hardship over the years, kind of like the Chargers, for sure, in that respect. How did you feel when they moved out of San Diego to Los Angeles? I guess not being from that area, it wasn't sort of it hit as close to home for you, but did you still did it feel weird to you that they moved cities?
No, not really, because I'm to be fair, before I got into football, I was actually an NBA fan. So you're seeing like the Seattle Supersonics move out of like Seattle and things like that. You're kind of familiar with the franchise system and how teams can move and stuff like that. Obviously, after digging a little bit into the sort of history of the league, you kind of realize how much it happened. It doesn't happen so often anymore, but in the early parts of the league, it was always happening. So it's not something that you kind of familiar with as a UK fan, I guess, but it's not something that you kind of have to embrace that kind of culture, don't you? You think, well, if it's sort of the things that they do over there, then it's the sort of things that they do. It's not kind of something for me to get involved in. To me, like you say, I wasn't not from California, not from San Diego, so it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really hurt me per se. Obviously, seeing Chargers fans that I followed on Twitter and things like that, then obviously they were all up in arms, and you still see angry San Diegans who in the comments every time Chargers tweet anything. It can literally be anything. This would be better in San Diego, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't really matter. At the end of the day, to me, it was still the same players. It was still the same team. The thing that would have maybe tipped me over the edge a little bit more was if they changed like the name and the colors and things like that. I know the ownership's kind of not a great thing in LA now, or it wasn't in San Diego. And the way it would kind of the way that the divorce happened from San Diego, let's say, was a messy one. But to me, obviously, I wasn't involved. It's not my tax dollars, for example, that are going towards not going for the new stadium in San Diego or anything like that. So it really didn't matter too much for me. It was the same team, it was the same logo, it was the same colors, and it just carried on from normal. But yeah, I can see how it hurt a lot of people for sure.
And they brought back the powder blue. That was a big move. This offseason was a big move for uniforms. I think Bucks and Browns smashed it, but also the Chargers, probably the prettiest uniforms in the league. Now, I know this is just a sort of, it's still on topic, but not something that everyone talks about. Uniforms do make a big difference. Me and Sean actually spoke about this when we did the Browns episode, that like classic look. Taking the Browns back from looking like an arena team and playing like an arena team to the old school Browns, the team that they kind of missed when the Ravens took off and stole that. Pardon the pun. The Ravens stole their franchise basically. Was it nice to see that they are going back to the older sort of colours?
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I mean, I liked the old uniforms. The old powder blue was, consistently voted one of the best uniforms, in the league, if not the best. But these just kind of taking it to a new stratosphere, didn't they? All 4 uniforms are probably right up there in the top 10 of the league. And I know we've been talking about it over the past week or so with the numbers. We like the aesthetics, right? We know that we need to look good to play good sort of thing. So, yeah, no, it was fantastic. And you know what? It's part of a kind of wider, grander plan that the Chargers have to kind of engage new fans, younger fans around Los Angeles, around California, around the world as well, obviously. So, it goes together with things like the Chargers, social media team, which is kind of like they've always got a creative thing up their sleeve. They've always got something on Instagram or Twitter or wherever going on just to make us laugh or just to kind of engage. And just having new uniforms is kind of important for the Chargers because obviously we know that we almost play second fiddle in the stadium. Obviously, to the Rams, like I said before, I kind of joked before saying that they're our landlords, which isn't really a joke.
Shaped like their logo.
With their old logo, yeah, exactly, which is kind of strange, isn't it? But yeah, no, it's just there as a wider, like I say, scheme, wider master plan of kind of engaging people and drumming up fans and things like that. Because one thing that kind of does hurt a little bit, even though not from there and things like that, is seeing the StubHub as it was, or whatever you want to call it, Dignity Sports Health Arena or whatever, just full of other fans. And as much as that was true, the media kind of took off with that and ran. It wasn't actually as bad as you actually believe. A lot of the time on Chargers Twitter, you'd actually see the other angle where people were actually full of powder blue jerseys. But hopefully we're not going to see that in SoFi Stadium. And hopefully, as time goes on, as the Chargers get more established in LA, they will become just as well supported as the Rams, if not better, because it's a big market, isn't it? Lots of teams, a couple of NBA teams, a couple of football teams, a couple of soccer teams, a couple of hockey teams, I believe. So it's not my sport. A couple of baseball teams, probably. The LA crowd have only got so much money to spend on sports, so hopefully they're going to be spending it the way of the Chargers because they've engaged these people and, like say, look good and kind of people just go towards the aesthetic look.
Yeah, I was going to say, because nobody wants to wear those Rams away uniforms.
Man, they're horrible,
you see them on TV. It was so weird because they were obviously like off-white, but like they were more off-putting white. It was like a really weird.
Who has that color? Just have white, right?
I thought my TV was broken. I'm legitimately not joking. I was like messing with the white balance and stuff because it looked so gross on. Give you a little flex with the like nice 8K TV or whatever, but it just looked off and it looked gross. But one thing we did touch on, how do you ever have like a what if moment? Like what if Drew Brees stayed?
Not really, because as I said before, I kind of got into the Chargers after Brees had left. I think it was like Rivers' second season, if I remember right, as the starter. So no, not really. And then I'm kind of not really a great history guy. I'm very much a kind of here and now and in the future. I'm looking at the draft. I'm looking at who can make my team better and things like that. I'm not really looking too much, apart from when I'm trying to understand the franchise and things like that, and kind of find my way in how they find my heart almost. But no, not really. Is a kind of boring answer for that one. Sorry if that's not great for the pod, but no, not particularly.
No. I just thought it's worth asking because I know some fans, even if they got into it later, they're like, we've traded away great players, or what if that trade had gone down, or what if we had drafted that, like what if Eli had not been a fucking baby and thrown a bitch fit on draft night and decided that he would go to San Diego despite the smaller media market.
But do you know what, right? As a Chargers fan, and Justin Herbert has made us kind of realize, or has made me realize this anyway, and looking at people like Sean, who are obviously Browns fans and teams of, fans of other teams, should I say, is to go from Drew Brees to Philip Rivers to Justin Herbert. That's rare, That's not something that happens to everyone. So, I obviously love Philip Rivers. I grew up watching him, obviously, as a Chargers fan. I say grew up, obviously, I wasn't a kid. But, he's been the Chargers quarterback. And obviously, looking back, obviously, Drew Brees is still in the league. And I can completely respect his game. Been a great player on a team that I just quite like as the Saints, historically. And actually, the Chargers and the Saints have been quite close doing joint practices when, pre-COVID times, things like that.
And they are from the greatest state in the country.
I knew you'd like that bit as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it, where you can't really complain too much. If it had gone from Drew Brees to a lesser quarterback, let's say, not a borderline Hall of Fame guy, maybe you would have had that what-if moment of, why did they do this? Maybe Philip Rivers has fallen on his face or something like that. I don't know, when he was actually ascending and became one of the better quarterbacks in the league. And then to go to it's like, well, we've actually done all right. So maybe it's not the time for what-ifs and things like that. But, yeah.
And given we've got 4 future Hall of Famers on the screen below us, do you think Philip Rivers belongs in the Hall of Fame?
It's difficult, isn't it? I mean, he's set a lot of records. A lot of them are from longevity, I would say. Because
most kids by a starting quarterback.
He just doesn't miss games, you know what I mean? It's one of those things where, as a Chargers fan, I should probably say yes straight away, unequivocally so. But it's one of those things, isn't it, where he didn't win a Super Bowl. And is that kind of a big requirement? Probably, because, you think of Hall of Fame. I don't think they should just let anyone in the Hall of Fame. Do you know what I mean? My standards for the Hall of Fame are pretty high. I don't think they should just...
Jim Kelly?
Probably not, Probably not.
What?
I mean, I know that'll upset a lot of people, but they didn't win Super Bowls, man. I know that's not all what it's about, because obviously then you can get, back end of the roster guys who are, winning Super Bowl rings and stuff like that. They're sort of automatically in. No, but... I think it should be pretty high. I think it should be pretty difficult to get in. I definitely don't think your guy Julian Edelman should be in there for sure. Maybe that's another podcast. Maybe let's not get into that on this podcast.
I'm about to say, I said this in my group chat the other day. I'd never thought he was the first ballot, but I think maybe if he dies under tragic circumstances, he'll get in a bit quicker. But if he, I think 2050 is fairly reasonable just for a guy who, I know they tout Pro Bowl as the sort of thing, but he's had 3 Pro Bowl seasons and been snubbed every time, and we've seen the Pro Bowl guys don't always get it right. Like
Pro Bowl's a popularity contest, man.
Everything in the NFL is these days. If I'm being totally truthful, even up to the draft, at some point, some guys get. Look, we've seen it with Daniel Jones. I had him mocked in the 5th round, and because he knew Peyton and Eli. They took him 6th. Was it 6th or 7th?
Yeah, 6, yeah.
So, a bit too much playing favourites in this league. But yeah, this has been a great chat, actually. It's not often we get to chat one-on-one, especially being recorded. Not always about the NFL. Mainly we are talking about college and stuff. And I will beat you down enough that you will eventually support LSU. Because you don't really have a college team right now.
No, I don't. I mean, I know I kind of latched onto UNC last year, but it didn't grab me enough for me to make it like a permanent thing for sure. I mean,
you're an Oregon man.
Again, I mean, it's the kind of same thing. I kind of latch onto players, and then I kind of, I latch on to Sam Howell and a few of the other UNC guys, obviously the running backs in particular this year. But obviously they're gone now, so it's difficult for me to kind of go through and who am I looking for now? I don't know anything that interested in looking back, through the depth chart and things like that, and the new guys coming in. But yeah, Oregon, same thing. I kind of looked out for them because I liked Herbert, when he was there. So kind of flit around, probably latch onto another team for prospects that I really like this year. I don't know, but yeah, no, I'm definitely still neutral in that sense, I would say.
as I say, maybe you could stay in state and look at like a UCLA or a USC, or look at the SEC, since that's where all the talent is.
I don't know, man. You know, I'm a Pac-12 guy, so we're one of those teams. I think if I ever took up permanent residence,
you love the air raid offense a little bit too much, I think.
I just love West Coast football. That's all.
It's fun. But yeah, thank you for coming on today, Lee. It's been great to talk about the Chargers, and hope I didn't rib you too much about Justin Trubisky or I can't really rip on him. He's played too well. Or your special teams. But yeah,
I'm used to it now, mate.
Taught me some stuff about the Chargers, given me sort of a new outlook in the team that I never really had. But before we get out of here, we've got to plug the draft guide, full10yards.com/shop. You can see all our genius breakdowns. Me and Lee both put a lot of work into it, along with the other guys. What positions did you do again?
So I did edge and the safeties, obviously sticking on the defensive side for us. So yeah, I know you can see all my takes on those two chapters of the book, as you always call it.
Yeah, go ahead and check it out. And obviously, for the people who are listening, if you want to give out your Twitter handle right now.
Yeah, so as you can see on the screen, at Wakefield 90. Really bad point there. I was absolutely on the other side of the screen. So yeah, bad one from me there. But
whereas reversed.
Yeah, it totally gets me all the time. I can't look at myself either because I'm reversed. So I look like I always want to push my hair the opposite way. Anyway, none of you here to talk about that. Yeah, at Wakefield 90 on the Twitter, and also at Full 10 Yards CFB. I'm usually behind the family handle. But yeah, no, man, it's been great. It's been different. Obviously, you hosting me rather than the other way around. And like you say, talking one-on-one's been fantastic as well. So no, thanks for having me.
Yeah, no, I appreciate you coming on, and everyone who's coming on and giving up their time for this. Eventually, we're going to get through all 32 teams, but I'm definitely going to have to doing some guest scouting like I do with players, just looking for people who support kind of poverty franchises like the Jets and the Raiders and stuff. Definitely going to have to plumb the depths.
There's some out there. We can find some people.
The hardest thing is going to be Cardinals, because I think there's like 2 fans who exist for that team. So we'll find one of them. We'll get them on. But I am the Himbo F10Y on the Twitter. You can catch me telling people why I don't like Micah Parsons or shouting at Steelers fans. That's kind of just my thing now, being in the city of Cincinnati. But yeah, like I said, check out all the socials that are down below, and make sure you go and pick up a draft guide, full10yards.com/shop. Yeah, genius work by us guys. But thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next one.
Kick it and go. Kick it and go. With a stiff arm, spin